Hey everybody, good day. My name is Bas Dijkstra. I'm an independent test automation consultant and trainer from the Netherlands, and I'm very excited to join you today to talk about my experience as a test automation engineer and consultant and give you my take on the question of, do we really need a test automation engineer? I've been in test automation for 18 years now. First as an engineer, so I was hired out to companies to help them improve their automation, build their automation for them, and help them use tools efficiently to support their testing. And what I want to share with you today is my experiences over the last 18 years and some of the things that went well and some of the things that went not so well. And mainly what I want to share with you today is a couple of lessons that I've learned about how we approach automation, what works, what doesn't work, and how I think we as a testing and automation and development community can do better moving forwards. This is me on one of my first test automation projects. It's not actually me, this is Milton Wadhams from The Office. If you haven't seen the movie, please do, it's hilarious. But just like Milton, I was typically, as a test automation engineer, I was typically put into a corner, not a corner office, just a corner of the building, and given a set of regression test scripts with the task of please go automate them, we close the door, and you can open the door again when everything is finished. So I wasn't really allowed to work together with other testers, with developers. I was literally just hired for the task of automating existing regression test scripts. Did that work? Well, not really. So, of course, like with every project, at the start everything is fine and you're booking some initial successes and everything looks good and everybody's happy. But invariably, at some point, things are going to start to turn south, and the project is starting to derail. And so, with the first project that I had too, that was the same case. So we started automating some of the more basic regression test scripts that worked, looked nice, everybody was happy, and then invariably, at some point, troubles started to emerge. The automation code base got out of hand, the scripts became more complex, we started running into some issues, and from that point on, really, the problems just kept on coming and coming and coming, and things started to go worse and worse until eventually people said, stop, this is not going to work. And the next project was pretty much the same thing. So we started afresh again with a new application, new tool, new set of regression test scripts for a different client. And at some point things started repeating itself. And then the project after that, again, initially when the train left the station, everything was fine. But at some point things started to derail and we started to run into problems. Now, at the time, I didn't really think anything of that. I was just happy that I was hired to automate. I had fun, I made some money, all well and good, but was I really doing my clients a service? I don't think so. I don't think that, especially, and of course hindsight is 2020, but if I look back on those projects, I think they were basically all just a massive waste of time and effort. It took me a while, but at some point I started to learn. I learned some lessons, and that's what I want to share with you today. So I want to talk a little bit about what lessons did I learn from all these initial projects and projects that came after those. Because, well, I don't think I know everything. I definitely, I am quite certain I don't know everything. But there's a couple of lessons that I've learned over the years that I think are worth sharing, and that the biggest problem is I keep seeing people who are getting into automation, teams and entire organizations that are getting into automation, falling into the same traps, experiencing the same problems as we did in the past, and I think that's a shame. So that's why I want to share some of these lessons with you. Lesson 1: automation plus isolation is frustration. Or in other words, test automation is an activity and not a role. So, and this comes back to the title of my talk: do we really need a test automation engineer? The job title of test automation is very much focused on test automation being a role, a member in a development team whose sole responsibility is to automate, to write code or create scripts or other types of digital assets that support testing. Now, I love test automation. I've been doing test automation for 18 years. I absolutely love it. I think there's lots and lots and lots of value in it. But test automation engineer as a role doesn't always work well, especially not in a way that we approached it in the projects in the past that I just talked about. But I still see a lot of companies that are looking for a test automation engineer. So these days I'm working as a consultant and a trainer in test automation, which means I help people, teams, organizations take the first or the next step in test automation. And I see lots of these companies hire for test automation engineers. The market is slowly cooling off a little bit, especially in the Netherlands, and I think it's the same in large parts of the world. But there's still a good demand for test automation engineers, and there's more demand than supply, actually. So one of the things that companies tend to do is take their what they call manual testers. I think that's referring to the people who test the manuals. I don't know. But take their testers and transition them into test automation engineers, because, well, how hard can it be? Doesn't really work. Why? Test automation is an entirely different skill set from testing. Sure, they complement each other, but to be successful with test automation, you need a specific set of skills, just like you need a specific set of skills to be successful as a tester. But they are not the same skills. If, as a tester, you also want to pick up test automation, that means learning new skills. And not everybody is willing, able, has the time, has the desire to grow these skills. Yet I see a lot of companies trying to mold these people, push these people from testing towards test automation as if it is a promotion, which I think it isn't. It's just, well, you're learning an additional skill that helps you do more efficient testing. I think that's a good thing. Knowing how to use tools to do more efficient testing, that's a good thing. But transitioning people away from what they call manual testers into what they call test automation engineers, I don't think that's a good thing. Let's have a quick look, or well, maybe not so quick look at some of the skills that those testers will also need to do. Will also need to learn if they want to move towards, if they want to be successful when it comes to test automation. Of course, they still need their software testing skills because, well, you're a tester. Test automation is an activity that supports testing. So they'll still need to be able to be good at exploring the product that you're building, critical thinking, risk analysis, asking lots of questions, and quality advocacy. So these are it's just a selection of the skills that I think make someone a good tester. And test automation does not leave testers, so you still need these skills. But then in addition, you'll also need software development skills. Fundamental software development skills even, such as knowing a thing or two about object-oriented programming. Maybe you want to learn something about Solid and some of the Solid principles or other principles that help you write better, more efficient code. You want that code to be clean and readable and easy to maintain. You'll need to learn debugging. You'll need to learn refactoring. All things that software developers do and understand and work with on a daily basis. Then there's the tools, the test automation tools, unit testing frameworks, API automation tools and or libraries, UI automation tools and or libraries. And maybe if there's other types of testing involved as well, they maybe even need to learn something about performance or security testing or accessibility testing or other types of testing. And for each of these types of testing, there's tools that can help you do some of the things that you do when you're testing in a more efficient way. And then there's the engineering part. Knowing a thing or two about CI/CD pipelines, about cloud platforms, about version control systems like Git, containerization technologies like Docker, and package managers and build tools to help you build and distribute code projects, which your test automation solutions frameworks are typically will be, in an efficient way. So that's lots and lots and lots of different skills that people associate with test automation that all play a role in doing test automation, developing test code and distributing and using running test code. But that's not a role, so that's a development team. I don't think it is reasonable to try and find or try and grow a person's engineers that can do all of that very well. I've not seen a lot of people succeed in doing that. And I've especially not seen a lot of people being successful doing that and still spend enough time and attention on testing. Basically what you see happen is that people get so caught up, so involved in writing the test code and learning how to write better code and learning how to do some of the things that support, or at least should support, testing in a more efficient way, using tools, using code, that they completely forget about why they're doing this in the first place, which is to support their testing. So they typically will move away from doing good and thorough and thoughtful and testing, lots of critical thinking, asking the right questions, to just becoming an automation engineer that completely forgets or at least is way less involved in actual testing. But testing itself is a skill. Well, you all know this. I've no idea why I'm telling this to you, but testing is a skill as well. A skill that needs to be honed, that needs to be practiced. And you'll need deliberate practice to maintain and grow your testing skills. And learning automation often takes time away from that. So I've not really seen a lot of people who were able to do all of that very well, which means you typically end up with a lot of very mediocre people who are mediocre at everything or mediocre at some of the things and just plain bad at some of the other things. Because it's hard to do all of these things that I've listed on that slide, that's 2 slides ago. It's very, very hard, if not impossible, to all do and understand all of those things very well. I definitely don't. I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And again, I've not seen many people who were able to do that very well. And if you find that person, if you find that one person, or if you manage to grow that one elusive person who can do that all, typically what you'll end up with is that person, or if you're very lucky, that small group of people, to become a silo, to become the sole go-to person or the go-to small group of people for all things test automation. And I don't think that that's a very good thing. I don't think you can be truly successful at scale over time if you keep maintaining these silos, these experts. Because we've had enough of these problems in the first place. We had developers thinking, I don't really know how to test that. I don't really want to test. I'm pretty sure that the testers will test the things that we do. And then there's testers who maybe think, oh, the developers will surely have tested that. Adding a test automation engineer, especially that test automation engineer who's going to do it all, is not going to help you solve this problem. Because all they really want to do is automate. So they are not going to help you do better when it comes to testing, when it comes to building a higher quality product, because all they're going to be focusing on is automation. And that really only leads to trouble. So what to do instead? What to do instead of looking for that test automation engineer? What should we do instead? The key word here for me is collaboration. Instead of trying to find someone who can do the automation for you, as was asked of me all those years ago, you go sit in the corner, we give you the scripts, you go automate. Have developers and testers work together. Have them learn from each other. You sometimes hear people joke about developers who are horrible testers. And some of them probably are. But I've met lots of developers who were very good at testing, or at least at the part of testing where they verify that the code that they wrote does what it's supposed to do. If you pair those people up, those developers up with testers who can look for potential troubles, who can coach and guide these developers into doing even better testing, into becoming better at looking for potential problems, I think that's a way more sustainable way of working together than trying to find a test automation engineer that's just going to help you do some of the testing more efficiently, or at least, aim to do that in a more efficient way. If you put developers ideally into the same room, the same physical room, if that's not possible because you're working remotely, at least in the same virtual room. So have them work together synchronously so they can actually have a conversation, talk to one another, and learn from each other. I think lots and lots of interesting and good things can happen that way. So again, developers can learn more about what good testing looks like, and that's more than just verifying that something works or can work. And testers learn more about development, which what developers do all day, which tools they use, what the code actually looks like. And oftentimes that will help testers grow more confident around code too, and give them all kinds of ideas on, but this testing, this verification, this experimenting that we're doing now, we could do that more efficiently using a bit of code or using a tool, or I've learned about a tool that can do this. Let's have a look and see if we can actually implement that and see if it actually helps us do this thing that we're doing right now in a more efficient way, which is automation. I still see companies sometimes, and for me as a consultant, sometimes that's a good thing. That I don't really want to I don't want to distract the people that are working on my product too much. Why can't I just hire a consultant, or sometimes even an army of consultants, to help me do this? As a consultant, again, part of me says, cool, that's a great way to make money. But looking back at all these projects that I've contributed to, that I've been a part of in the past, I don't think that this is necessarily the best way of doing things. Or in other words, it depends. I think hiring external consultants can definitely be valuable. It can definitely help you take that first or that next step in automation, but please make sure to find a consultant that works with you and not one that tries to do the work for you and essentially becoming a silo of their own in the process. So by all means, if you say, well, we're stuck or we need some extra help, hire a consultant, but make sure that it's what I think the right type of consultant that helps you take the next step instead of trying to do all the work for you. The second lesson that I've learned is that writing automation after the code, way after the code, also doesn't work. And by that I mean we have an application that we've been regression testing manually for 3, 6, 12 months, and we're bored of doing that, so let's automate all of those regression test scripts. Doesn't work. Because the longer the time between writing the code and writing the tests, generally the more inefficient your automation will be. Why? Because people will have moved on. There's no time for talking about how can we test this in the most efficient way? How can we use tools in the most efficient way to help us do this testing more efficiently? Which is just going to lead to lots of inefficient automation. That doesn't necessarily mean automating your regression tests is a bad idea. It's a good starting point, or at least a good conversation starter, and maybe turns out automating part of the things that happen in your regression test is a good idea. But just blindly saying, well, these are my regression tests, I want all of them automated, typically only leads to pain and problems. And one of the main reasons there is test cases. These regression test scripts are typically written by humans for humans. And trying to automate those one-on-one, it really gets messy very quickly. There's lots and lots of steps in this one, whereas automated tests for me they thrive when they typically check just one thing. There's an over-reliance on that one interface in your application that's explicitly written to be consumed by human beings, the graphical user interface, whereas automation is much more efficient on other types of interfaces. So just taking your regression test scripts as a basis, as a foundation for your automation. It's not necessarily a bad idea overall, but there's lots of work to be done and lots of conversations to be had before I think you should start with that. What you're going to get otherwise is basically just this. This is what's called a Rube Goldberg machine, and it's an overly complex contraption that is there to essentially perform a very simple task. In this case, it's a very complicated machine. Basically, the only point of this thing is to turn on the light that you see on the right side of the screen. And lots of automation solutions that I've seen are basically Rube Goldberg machines. Overly complex, very slow, very expensive. And what they test, what they verify, are essentially very straightforward, simple things. What they automate are very straightforward, simple tasks. And that's all because of a lack of testability. Because when the code was written 12 months ago, nobody talked about how are we going to test this, how can we automate this in a more efficient way. And 12 months later, nobody wants to pay for and spend the time reverse engineering testability into your code. Nobody. Everybody wants automation, everybody wants efficient testing, and nobody wants to go back to that code that was written a while ago and say, well, let's spend some time improving the testability or automatability of this code or of this part of this parts or these components of our application. Why? Because, well, we want to build and we need to build. We are asked to build new things instead. This is an article by Blake Norrish, an engineer at Slalom, who wrote about the pitfalls of automating existing test cases. I keep coming back to this article, so that's why I wanted to include that in this talk. I really recommend you have a look because he writes very eloquently about some of the pitfalls that I've just discussed and much, much more. Very, very well worth a read. So what should we do instead of automating these regression test scripts? Again, collaborate. Work together as testers and developers to do more efficient testing and automation, especially much closer together in time. So while developers are building the feature, have testers get involved and see, well, how can we test this? Where can we test this? When can we test this? And when can we use tools to do that in a more efficient way? So in other words, development, testing, and automation, they should go hand in hand. So don't say, well, we've been testing this for a while, let's go automate this stuff now. Because again, it might work sometimes, but a lot of the times it's very painful and very slow. Either that or I've just been working with the wrong kind of companies. But I think this is something that is happening in lots of places, even the ones that I didn't work in, because I don't think it's all my own fault. Maybe some of it, definitely some of it, but not all of it. The last lesson, lesson number 3, don't just throw more tools at the problem. Tools are absolutely wonderful. There's no automation without tools. I love tools. I love learning about new tools. I love getting more proficient in using existing tools that have been around for a while. I even love developing my own tools. But tools themselves are not the solution. And so typically when we have a testing problem, when we say, well, testing is slow, expensive, too shallow, just throwing tools at the problem, more tools at the problem, is not very likely to address, let alone solve those problems. What I think helps very well is first taking a step back and see what problem are we solving in the first place. So what's the problem that we're trying to solve in the first place? And get a better view, better understanding of the root causes of that problem. One of the ways to look at that problem is by considering not just the how, which is the tools, how are we going to use tools to that, but also take a step back and ask yourself, why are we doing this? Why are we testing? Why are we spending time and effort, and therefore money, in automation to help us do this more efficiently? What are we going to automate? Are we automating the right things? Are we automating things that are actually valuable? Where are we automating? Which means are we over relying on slow and expensive end-to-end tests, for example? Is there a way? Is there something we can do to help us test and automate more efficiently? At what time and effort and how much money will that take us? Are we testing and automating at the right points in our software development process? When are we going to test? Is there a way we can bring development and testing closer together in time to do the things that we do, and do the things that we do the things that we're supposed to do in a more efficient way? And who's going to do all of that automation? Do we really need a test automation engineer? Do we have the right testers, the right developers involved? And by answering these questions, looking deeper into these questions, I feel that typically really helps to get a much better, deeper understanding of the problem and of what problem you're trying to solve with tools in the first place. I didn't come up with this myself. This is called the Kipling method, after Rudyard Kipling, author of Jungle Book. I don't know why it's called that way, but it is. So by all means, have a look at that website and a close look at this method. Again, I've been using this for a number of years in workshops and with clients, with some pretty good results, and in getting a much better, deeper understanding of what problem are we trying to solve in the first place. Why are we doing this in the end? Because test automation is about fast feedback. This is why I want automated tests. I don't want to do away with all the regression testing. I don't think that that's a good thing. I don't think that that's the right attitude towards test automation. What I want from automation is faster feedback. When a developer adds a new feature, pushes a new feature, pushes a bug fix, makes some other kinds of improvement, I want to know, are the assumptions that I've codified in my test, in my automation, does the code in its current state still meet those? That doesn't mean that I have all the answers to all of my questions when I've written my automation. For me, a passing test suite, a passing set of automated tests means, well, all the assumptions that we know that we've codified, they are still being met by the code, which means we're ready to start deeper testing. It doesn't mean we're done, we know everything is tested. I think this is a much healthier attitude towards automation, and if you have this attitude, I think it's much more likely that your automation efforts are perceived as successful. And when things go wrong with your automation. Again, the tool is typically not the problem, which means the relentless focus on new and better tools, it's not going to help us address those more fundamental problems with testing and with automation. And no, low-code automation tools means it's just more people being able to do testing and automation. That's not the solution to all of this. That's not solving these issues that I talked about. That is making the how a little bit easier. I don't have anything against these low-code automation tools per se, but they are not the solution to the problems or to the typical problems that help you or the typical problems that occur when testing starts and automation starts to be painful. Again, there's great low-code automation tools out there. I've used some of them with good success because they were a good fit. But just the choice for low-code automation tools, that's not the solution to all of this. Don't get me started on codeless, by the way. That doesn't exist. Same applies for me to AI. There's lots of talk about AI. Some of that talk is very exciting. Some of that is just very depressing. But I sincerely believe that AI itself is just, it's throwing more tools at the problem and more code at a problem is not going to address all of those problems alone. So we still need to ask more questions around the why, the what, the where, the when, and the who. And I think AI and adding AI to your testing and automation approach is just, putting everything in the how basket, or most of your eggs in the how basket. And again, the tools are typically not the problem, and the tools are typically not the solution. Wrapping things up, do we really need a test automation engineer? There's only really one answer I can give after talking about all of my experience, my thoughts, my ideas about test automation, all the things I've learned over the last couple of years. I really only have one answer to, do we really need a test automation engineer? And that answer is, it depends. If you're going to do automation, if you're going to approach automation as an isolated activity, or as an isolated role, rather, done by someone in isolation, somewhere in the corner, way after the code was written, and just give them tools and say, well, this is what you're going to do. This is our testing problem. Here's your tool. Here's your set of scripts. Go automate. That's not going to work. However, if you use automation as a building block, as a tool to help you perform certain activities in a more efficient way, and especially, most important of all, if you are going to make developers and testers collaborate on the development and on the testing and automation, and really allow them focus on making them build solutions together, helping them, facilitating them, allowing them, enabling them to work together to solve problems, do a little bit better each and every day, I think you're definitely on the right way. Thank you very much.